Okay. I never know when we're live. I think we're live. And we're live, joined this hour by Jacob Hernandez, who is a musician, a stream maker. Very, very excited, very, very excited to talk to him. He's really just incredibly renowned in this regard. So before we get started to some of the some of the things you've done and been involved in, let's start at the beginning. Jacob, can you tell us how you got involved in just the music in general before we get into the stream making?
Awesome. Well, I grew up in East LA and started playing music at Plaza de la Raza. Uh, I was a student there of Kiko Cornejo, who at the time was playing with the Quetzal band. I got to know them. I got to know Gabriel Tenorio, who had played with Quetzal before then. And all the scene, like my cousin is Raul Pacheco from Osomatli. So I grew up around, like in the scene, I guess you could call it, in the 90s, late 90s. Um, and I grew up in that scene. Uh, Around 2001, a lot of Jarocho musicians started coming to LA. So I was part of the community of people that was like, I don't know, I was just being a metiche. I was about 19 or 20 years old. And we would, I would go help them. I had a van. I would drive them around. I would get them their, whatever they needed, and just I wanted to be part of the part of the environment there, like a fly on the wall. So when those groups started to come to Los Angeles, I was really involved at the time, and soon after that, I went to Veracruz and I started my musical journey with that. I've been playing son jarocho now for almost 20 years, like 17, 18 years.
So you mentioned a lot of a travel, from Mexico to here, like a lot of musicians going back and forth, kind of almost like a San Rocho, like kind of like a San Rocho, like a superhighway or something like that. Musicians, can you describe
Yeah.
a little bit more about that, like that kind of cross back and forth?
Yeah, well, it has a long history, actually. A lot of the Cine de Oro in Mexico and those films that we know, like those famous scenes with the jarochos and all white and playing the harp and the dancers and everything. Most of those films were actually made in Hollywood. So the jarocho musicians were coming, a lot of them, to be in the films. They had went to Mexico City from Veracruz, and the music was first came out in the radio, and then with television, and then the Cine de Oro period in Mexico. They started coming to Los Angeles, and so there's a generation actually of like older dudes who also play son jarocho, and they play a little different, and they play in a different key because, well, just the different traditions. And so there's that branch of son jarocho that's been in California and in Los Angeles in particular since that period. And then in the late 90s, well, in the early 90s, there was a movement in son jarocho that was more based on the rural style of music. The musicians that didn't leave and uh, didn't dress a certain way, or didn't their music stayed more like in the rural style. And that movement happened in the 90s, or began probably in the 80s, and got to Los Angeles in the late 90s with a lot of people from Veracruz first. And then when that big I don't know if you remember, like right in, there was a lot of money for arts at the time. I remember nothing like now, but there was a lot of arts organizations like that did a lot of work to bring those groups, and obviously a lot of people who did a lot of work to bring those groups too.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of movement that came, and it was a different branch, but and people in Santana, people in Los Angeles, eventually people in Chicago and New York, all over the country. As the musicians had work and they were going around playing in different parts in the Midwest, they left their disciples behind, and there must be hundreds of people playing now in the country, son jarocho,
Yeah.
probably thousands. Yeah.
So how would you describe how would you describe the LA style? What is kind of the unique about the LA style that differentiates it from other styles?
Well, what's cool is that we have those two branches there, and they exist simultaneously, and the people know each other. You know, even if they play different styles, we know each other and we play together, and so that's kind of cool because there was like Andres Huesca, who was a famous harpist who came out in a lot of those movies. He actually died in Santa Marta Hospital there in East LA. So we have both of those branches there and people who take it very seriously. But in general, the people who learn in the last 10 or 20 years, most of us tend to play the rural style, I guess I would call it. And then a lot of the older guys, um, they learn from that other branch. So it's kind of cool. We actually get like, and of course, they're teaching people too. So there's people learning and playing that style to younger people also, just not as much.
Yeah. So Son Rocha is seen as kind of like a very oftentimes I mean someone that's not really involved, not like in it, but like is around it, is often seen as
Hmm.
like very usually there's something political going on. Oftentimes like it's usually.
Yeah.
So can you talk about a little bit about like why is it such a heavily politicized genre?
I think that we as Chicanos tend to politicize everything. So the truth is, it's a music that's a live music and it reflects, everything that people deal with. So there's verses about everything, and there's a song for almost every subject and an appropriate time for just about any verse. Um, in the U.S., we're Chicanos, and so primarily Chicanos playing. Uh, a lot of our identity politics, we want to be, we see it as a connection to Mexico. We see it as a resistance to becoming gringos. We see it as like a way to connect with those rural people, and we go and we visit, and they live in a lot of them, not all of them, some of them, they're not all rustic people, but a lot of them are, or their parents are. They come from very rustic places where they grow their food and they kill their animals. And so we see it as like a connection to that sort of self sufficiency, you know? And but I don't know if I don't think it's really particularly political in Mexico because in Mexico they're not immigrants, so they're not concerned with immigrant rights because they're there where they're from. But as if we come to the U.S., people from we're immigrant communities, or in other cases, Chicano communities like mine that have been here a long time, but we're still connected to that movement and that struggle. So we use Son Jarocho, I think, in a political way, but I don't think there's anything inherently political about
Yeah. I mean, it could just be me
it.
and the things I get invited to. So I mean,
Well, yeah, but that's absolutely what you're likely to get invited to today. If we talk about Son Jarocho in the U.S., it's always connected to those other elements.
yeah. So I want to get into the stream making. Before we do that, we have a question from the audience. Andrea asked, does he think that it serves the same purpose as the corrido?
That it serves the same purpose as a corrido to tell a story. Yeah, corridos tend to be like to actually tell a definite story. En este año pasó esto y esto, don whoever. Like they actually literally tell a story. And Son Jarocho is very poetic,
Hmm.
so it's not necessarily uh, could tell a story, might not tell a story. Sometimes it's a lot of like double entendres. Sometimes it's a lot more um, like poetic in the sense that they may not ever say what they're actually talking about. Instead of talking about a woman, they'll compare her to a flower and make a whole verse about that or something. It's not. It's a little different than the corrido, but yeah, definitely, they tell stories just in a different ways.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us, how did you? I mean, like you moved from doing the bands and playing music with people. Before we get into stream making, can you talk a little bit about like some of the venues and different places that you would go see music, that you play music, like in the early days?
In the early days, we used to go to like Self Help Graphics back when it was on Gage, on Gage, yeah, it was on Gage and Cesar Chavez. That was like the big spot, you know. Oh, let's see. Yeah, we used to play downtown before there was anything happening downtown. Now there's action all the time.
Sorry.
Hmm.
Sorry about that guy. I was trying to answer a question, but then something happened. Anyways, go on.
I was involved though with the East Side Cafe and all of that stuff. We used to do a lot of even before it was a place, and we used to. I was there with the Autonomous People's Collective and all the community meetings. I was there. I did my time.
All right. So tell us about how'd you get involved in the actual string making? Like where did that if, don't tell us so much about the dynamics of it, but like where did that transition come into in your life?
Well, I was studying in 2002. I was a student at first I was at UCSB, and then I was studying Chinese medicine in Santa Barbara. But I was working part time. When I got to Santa Barbara to study, I called out Francisco Gonzalez, who's the founder of the business. Um, and I needed work. I knew he was from East LA. I met him once before, and he changed my jarana strings once. I went and I made the pilgrimage out there to meet him. And I remembered he was from East LA, and I thought, well, maybe he'll give me a break. So I called him up. I said, hey, I'm this kid from East LA. I'm studying here. Um, I need a job. I'm a musician. And right away, uh, he's like, oh, that sounds great. I needed someone right now. He had fallen behind with some work. He had an accident. So I became an apprentice with him for about a year. And he had to sell the business later. His wife is a professor. She got another position at the University of Arizona. She's a badass. Yolanda Gonzalez, she's a badass. Yolanda Broiles Gonzalez, she's a serious scholar. And so it didn't make sense to move the whole business since it was just a small business. And he kind of liked me. And my mom had just retired and she wanted to start like a little project. And so she actually bought the business from him. And then we ran it together for a few years. And now I'm kind of just paying her off a little bit at a time. That's what I've been doing for the last 12 years now. I've been the owner.
So like take us into that a little bit. Like how like just kind of basic 101, not the not the whatever, but how exactly are strings made? And most people just buy an instrument, they learn to play a little bit, they learn how to tune it, but they have I mean, how the thing actually works. I mean, it's like it's a mystery. We got to most people
Yeah.
how the thing actually comes about.
Right. Well, originally instruments were all pretty much had gut strings, different animal gut strings, and they would dry them and twist them and stretch them to get to the right mass and gauge depending on what they needed. And then soon, 150, 200 years ago, steel was invented, and they started to make instruments with steel strings. And then almost 90 or 80 years ago, plastics, they invented nylon. And so nylon took over, became the main material, and basically replaced all the people in, like, for guitars, it sounds great because um, there's a million guitars in the world. And so a company can make like a decent set of classical guitar strings, and they know that they're going to sell 10 million sets, and so it's worth it for them to make it. But they're never going to sell 10 million Vihuela sets or 10 million Jarana sets. So there's not been like an industrial solution for those instruments that are rural instruments, that are regional instruments, that are kind of marginalized instruments. And at the same time that um, they're not being served by the big markets, they also lost the knowledge of the people who used to make strings by gut. And so now people what people end up doing in Mexico is buying guitar strings, and they only have those gauges available and those sizes available, and they have to like make it work for their instruments. And what we do is actually design instruments made for those. I mean, design strings made for thinking of those regional instruments and designing them to give, the right, um, the right tension at the right scale length, at the right, for the right instrument to be tuned in the way that they need to tune it in that climate. So it's like all of these factors that have to be, it's a lot of knowledge of the instrument. So that's why nobody ever really serves those musicians, because it's just not enough. You can't manufacture a solution for that, or a product that's going to, you have to know a lot about these instruments, that there's only a few couple hundred of them that exist. You have to care. You really have to care about helping the musicians to solve the problems, so that they can get the strings that are the right tension and everything that they need, so that they can get the ideas in their head out, and play what they want to play without the strings limiting their ability. So that's really what we do, is make a high quality string for geez, I don't know, probably 100 instruments, um, and some instruments that people invent sometimes, but I can do that for people. I can fix it and make it right for you,
Yeah.
so that's really what we do. And mostly we live from guitarron sales. Mostly all the mariachi groups in the U.S., all the schools, mariachi schools. We have to be like the most popular brand, definitely in the country. And now we're trying to move and sell more in Mexico.
Yeah. Well, good luck. But that sounds sarcastic. I mean, like I mean, I know. I mean, I really mean it. But like, yeah. So this is interesting though. So with guitarron, that's kind of like the big thing, right? Um, there's other stuff you do with the more custom made instruments. Almost like you're almost like a custom tailor, right? So do you like meet with
Exactly.
so you meet with the musicians and you talk to them about what they need, and then you move from there, or how does this all work?
Yeah. So if someone has a harp, I mean, I have kind of a generic set that I can refer to, but I really prefer when I can have the instrument. If it's an instrument like guitarrones now are pretty standardized, and we have a good product that works for them, and so I don't really have to know, like, to see their instrument. But like harps, especially, jaranas, especially, a lot of just weird like jarocho instruments, especially, have all of these variations, um, and different names and different sizes and different tunings and all of these things. So it's taken all of these years of working with musicians directly, and making strings, by hand. Behind me, I have the machine here. It's like a lathe. It's got a hook here on each side, and I'll stretch a piece of steel, or some silk fiber, or maybe a piece of nylon, and I'll stretch it on this, and then I'll wrap it with another material with more nylon, or some silver copper, or some bronze, or something like that. And just depending on what it is, on what the instrument is, that's basically the process. It's doing it, wrapping it by hand. And yeah, there's only I know of two other people in California who do it, friends of ours. And not a whole lot of people do it. And we're the ones really focusing on traditional and regional instruments. My friend Gabriel Tenorio used to work here with us, and we decided to split the business, because he was concentrating on guitar and electric guitar, and that's a whole other world, like a whole other workshop. And I don't play electric guitar. I don't know about that stuff. So we split the business now, and it works a lot better this way. And he kind of specializes on that, and we specialize on all of our regional instruments, and we're not like confusing ourselves. We can just concentrate on what we know and what we're good at. So then there's another guy in California who does like I think I don't know if he makes them by hand, but he gets custom strings made for all kinds of like extreme instruments and stuff. But
Yeah.
we all have our own niche, it's not,
Yeah.
and no one's making $1 million. It's just like, it's a service job. We're just doing a service. to people like any little shop. Um, I have a little space in East LA that's about 12 by 12 feet behind a carburetor shop, right around the corner from my mom's house there where I grew up. And so we work from there in LA, and then I live here in Tijuana, and I have my machine here. I do my work here. I take it there, and that's how we do it.
So normally I would like save all the like plugs to the end because that's just the way to go out. But I know people tune in, tune out. I also know you're a businessman, so someone's asking a question right now. So and they may leave. So let's answer it now. It says, please provide contact info for the string provider. What is the name of the business?
Guadalupe Custom Strings is the name of the business, and the website is thegcs.co. So it's thegcs.co.
Wait.
And we're in East LA. We also have a Facebook page.
I'm gonna put your
Um,
website in the link right now. So tell me again.
it's thegcs.co. So thegcs.co. That's the website.
All right, cool. We got the website and
Thank
the
you for asking.
link.
That's
Yeah, no
cool that
problem.
people are interested.
Yeah. So we got the website right there now. So yeah, back to the interview. Back to the interview. So how do you make those decisions based on like I'm a complete lay person. Most people are to the world of string making. So like, how do you make those
Uh-huh.
decisions based on whether it's gonna be nylon or it's gonna be gut or it's gonna be like steel? Like, how do you like?
Okay. Well, some instruments are made to take like a steel string guitar. Steel has a lot more tension, and if you put steel strings on a classical guitar, you would crack the guitar. So a steel string guitar and steel string instruments are made stronger, and they're braced a certain way to lessen the tension on the instrument. So some are just the instruments designed that way. And then like on if you're, let's say you have some guitarra or whatever that you bought in Veracruz, and if you're over there, you only have access to guitar strings. So what people used to do was like use the third string for the guitar for this, and then use like they would end up with a set that one string would be really tight and the other one's too loose, and they couldn't tune it the way they wanted, and the tension was never right. And so obviously that changes like how you're playing. You have to like you have one string that's really tight and you have to hit it a certain way, and then another string that's loose. Like it's just it made playing for a lot of people very difficult, and it made the instruments a lot of times not even like you couldn't even hear them. Like like in Veracruz, I don't have one right here. In Veracruz, they have an instrument called the leona. That's kind of like a baritone or bass, a big guitar. And when I started going there, they used to get two guitar fifth strings and like twist them around, like just put it, tie it to the end, and then twist it, and then put it up and tune it. And then like they had another low one that they needed, and they would get like three fifth strings or two six or whatever they had, like a combination. And they just ended up with these shitty sounding strings. It just didn't work for them. It was the best that they had, but it sounded like shit, you know? So uh, that was when I first started going, and now it's been years since I've seen a Leona with set up that way because everyone has our strings now. I haven't. It's been years since I've seen that, you know, because basically we were able to solve that problem for them, and make it so that they could, especially those two lower strings or the top strings that are lower notes, like they just sounded deaf. You couldn't hear. If you were sitting in a living room with someone, you could hear them. But if you try to go out and play in a fandango, like you just didn't hear it. And the people were there playing, but they couldn't be heard really, though, at least those two strings. And now nobody has that problem. I haven't seen a Leona without our strings in years. So number one, we make one that works, and then we also make one that lasts a super long time. So even if the poorest people who don't know me maybe could never get it from me in person. They got it from someone else used, and it sounds way better than the old thing that they used to do. So, we fix like very practical problems for people, On the requinto jarocho, the little guitar, like you can pretty much make the set. It's a four-string instrument, and you can use the third and the fourth and the fifth of the guitar, and it works okay. But there's a string there, the G string, that nothing sounds right for it. Nothing sounds right that you can find in the market. So we had to invent a string, like a totally different product that doesn't have anything to do with a classical guitar and wouldn't work for a classical guitar. But it's a string designed specifically for that instrument and for that note. And we solved their problem. No one has to use like have a shitty sounding set anymore, So
Yeah.
very, very practical, like logical, physics related problems. That's what we solve for them.
So okay, so don't give away the secret sauce, right? Don't like obviously this is proprietary kind of stuff. But I'm kind of curious, like what the process is like. So you're just like sitting there all night and you're just like playing to each other, like no, it's all wrong, start all over. Throw shit on the ground. What's the process look like when you're trying to like solve a problem like that?
Okay, so normally if someone brings me, a lot of times it's the musician first. First, sometimes the musician doesn't know what they want to do and how they want to tune. So I have to get them
Yeah.
to finally decide on what they want or what we're gonna do. But then I look at what they have, and usually what they have is some combination of guitar strings or steel guitar strings or cello strings sometimes, and they're trying to mix and match strings to make something work. So I'll listen to what they have. I'll listen to, what is it that's wrong? Like maybe they're set up, like this is what I want to do, this is what I'm using, but what's wrong with it? Oh, this string sounds, it's not right, it's too loose. This one's way too tight, and this one, it's just not giving me the right sound. And so I'll based on what they have, um, and knowing the instrument, because depending on the construction of the instrument, sometimes the instrument asks for more tension and it needs more tension. Like an instrument, a wooden instrument is pulled together by the strings, and that tension of the instrument being pulled together when you strum on the strings, all of that energy goes around the entire instrument, and you need a certain amount of tension. If you put too much tension, obviously you're going to break it. And if you don't put enough, you're not going to get that beautiful reaction of the frequencies moving around the entire instrument, which is what you want to happen. So it's like a sweet spot that you want to hit, and you want the tension to be right within this sweet spot, and that's going to change depending on the instrument itself and how it's built and how it's tuned and everything. But it's a lot of it's taken work. It's taken really. I hear instruments now, and I hear like my teacher told me I would. Like Francisco told me, he's like, you're not going to be able to hear music the same way. Sometimes you won't enjoy it because you'll be just listening to the strings, and you'll be thinking about the sound rather than enjoying the music. And that happens to me sometimes. Like like I can tell if I hear a recording, I can tell you almost like what the instrument looks like and what the strings are made of by hearing it. So it's a lot of that work, like work directly with the musicians. And we don't measure tension like in pounds or anything. A lot of nerdy guitar players, they like to like focus on, oh, I have this many pounds of pressure per string, and it's like we don't really deal with that. I know how much I know what it should feel like, and that's what I go by. I don't ever measure, take measurements of actual. What I do measure sometimes are gauges and things that's relevant, but it really has a lot more to do with how it feels, how making sure that it feels right, and so that the action is right, so that the musician can think about their ideas. That's what we want, for them to stop worrying about, oh, how am I going to make this figure happen. We want them to stop thinking about that and think about their music.
Yeah.
And they love it, man. We've had people in tears sometimes when you fix a problem for them and they can play the music in their head that they've been wanting to play. Like, man, it's great. They're
Yeah.
so happy. They're so grateful.
Right. So, I don't necessarily want this interview to become like kind of a commercial too much, right? But like there seem to be some people who are interested in what you got going. So I got another question for you. Do you do danzante conachas?
Those are those like little mandolinas that they
Yeah,
use.
yeah,
I think I know what they're talking about. Yeah,
yeah.
I've done some work. We've had some even danzantes, right? Because I had my shop in East LA, and we're all the Chicano people know about us too. So yeah, I think what they're referring to are they're like little mandolinas with
Yeah.
steel strings, and yeah, we've done that before, and I can hook them up too. I just have to see it because I don't remember exactly how it is,
Okay.
but that's exactly what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, that's what he meant. So cool, cool. We got that question answered. Can
Mhm.
service that as well. Um, so what's how have you migrated this kind of work right now given the pandemic? Like, what do you I
Ooh.
what are you doing?
Yeah, we're at about I'd say probably 40% of our normal work. So I have one. Well, he's my employee. Well, not really an employee. He's an independent contractor, but he's my friend. We've been working together for years. And another friend that's been working for me a couple years, who's like just a few hours a week. So with the work that comes in, it's pretty much been enough to keep them working so that they're not affected, because I need them. Eventually, this is gonna pass,
Yeah,
and so I'm in a spot like I have to be sure that the people that I depend on have their work to do.
yeah,
So then we've been working on. I've been kind of just basically passing all the work from the shop to them to keep them working, and then over here, luckily, I live in Tijuana,
yeah.
and luckily we've had some business here in Mexico,
Hmm.
and so I've just been doing that. Uh, I just had some money saved and I put some money on a piece of land here in Rosarito just a few days ago.
Yeah.
So so that's next. But right now I rent a house in Playas de Tijuana. So it's expensive for Mexico, but it's nothing compared to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And we're staying home and eating at home and just trying not to spend too much money. But we're getting by. We're just getting by.
So what's the national? I mean, like, not to go too far afield, but like, what's the national response been like in Mexico compared to the U.S. as far as you could tell to the crisis?
Well, people definitely looked to the U.S. and saw the whole shit fall apart in New York, at least,
Yeah.
because it seems like that's where it's really bad is in New York.
Hmm.
And so people seen that, and they got really scared because they know here in Mexico they don't have any infrastructure to deal with that. If New York was falling apart, they're like, shit, we're gonna eat shit here. But so yeah, people were paying attention to the orders. People were staying at home. Everyone I know on Facebook, probably more than half of my Facebook friends are in Mexico, and they're all at home. Lately, I've seen just in the last few days, people are opening up their businesses here in Tijuana again, and but everyone's just figuring out a way to like, almost everyone I see has a mask on, and in the stores, in the small businesses, people are just maintaining distance and asking people to only come in, just common sense things, but they're definitely taking it seriously. At the same time, they're not getting any checks and they can't stop working. People live day to day here. So if they don't work for a week like that, that's it. They're not eating. So people are creeping out, but I see that people are very careful too, and everyone
Yeah, yeah.
seems to just be, they got to do what they got to do, but carefully.
I think in the U.S. we get a very distorted sense of what's going on in Mexico. We get like this kind of idea that like the government's irresponsible and it's gonna let everyone die in the streets and this and that. Um, that's kind of the headlines we get out here. But it sounds to me like,
Really?
yeah, no,
No,
I
it's
mean,
been
we get very distorted news about of Mexico in the states. I mean, it's just,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. People have a distorted idea of the U.S. too and Mexico
yeah.
of what they're gonna get when they cross the
Oh yeah.
border. But yeah, the government asked people. They closed down, most of the businesses for a while, and now people are just slowly opening. So, same thing.
Same thing.
I think the people here are definitely, they know that they don't have the infrastructure here to deal with a serious situation, so they're kind of everyone's taking care.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what's you're maintaining, but like, are there any like interesting new projects on the horizon?
Well, yeah, we're trying to move some of our not as profitable um, products that I know we need to sell, that people need and they rely on them.
Mhm.
But the truth is, a lot of it's not not very profitable to do in the U.S. So I'm working here now and training someone here also, to kind of replicate what I have in East LA, to try to make it so that, like, the guitarron, which is our bread and butter, like, we live. Thank you, mariachis, we love you guys. The guitarron and vihuela, we live from that. So I want to keep that, like, in the U.S. with my people there that have been working there with me for so long, like, so that, and then I want to, some of the not as profitable things, I think we need to move the production. I always felt bad when we first opened the business. A lot of people like, why don't you just move it to TJ? Why don't you? And it's like, no, that's not the idea. Like, we want to pay people well. We want to have a good quality of life. We're the ones doing the work. Like, I don't want to just have a factory. And so I'm not going to have a factory in TJ, but I can move some of the not as profitable work that I have to now to keep the company going. And we have to do some of it here.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but same thing, people are gonna have a good quality of life here,
Yeah.
and you know, I'm selling to street
Boutique items.
musicians,
That's the way to say it.
so
Boutique.
yeah,
People like it when you say
so
boutique, not less profitable. Boutique, right?
yeah,
Specialty,
yeah, man,
specialty
it's
item.
a specialty.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a special. It Like, if we charged what the work was really worth, like, they wouldn't be able to afford it. So,
Yeah.
as it is, we have to just. It's always like cutting a line, like. We have to pay people well. We have to live well. We're not going to be slaves, but we also have to sell to a certain group of people. If we outprice them and have this super expensive product that no one can afford, like, what's the point? So it's always balancing that. And so that's what I'm up to now, like, trying to figure out what exactly to do in Mexico and what to do in the U.S. And just try to figure out how to run, like, a fair business with people that you care about, that you want them to have a good quality of life and go take a day off when they need it. And it's hard work on the machine. Like, it hurts your back. You need to, like, stretch, and you can't work 9 hours a day. You can work 4 or 5 hours on the machine a day, and that's it. So it's just balancing. It's trying to find, like, the right, like, that line where you can't lose money, and you have to make some profit, but you have to do everything fair. I don't know. That's what the challenge is, to just do things fair.
Yeah, no, I definitely. I mean, like, I myself, like, I book colleges, I do like events, but I don't have any, but I don't have anyone working for me, right? And so, like, that's always been the thing in my mind. Like, I don't want anyone working for me because I don't want to feel like I don't want to be people's bosses, and I don't feel like I don't ever want to be in a situation where someone said
Yeah.
like you're exploiting people or something like that. So yeah, definitely when you
Yeah.
when you hire people and and you're in business together and you're doing something together, it's it's a real thing to make sure that like everything's fair, everything's above board. That's not a hard road to walk.
Yeah, it's a hard road to walk. And they're my friends, like, Albert, he makes more strings than me. He's one of my best friends in the world, like, but sometimes if you walk in there, you would think he was a boss the way he talks to me. But that's cool, like, so he gets mad, we get mad at each other sometimes or whatever, but we're always, we're friends in the end. He needs to do well so that my business does well, because in the end, I make money off of his labor, and he makes money off of my work that I do to organize a business. So it has to work both ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's hard to describe that without sounding like a petty capitalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we'll both be working together and we're listening to like Richard Wolf or something, and he's looking at me like, So he's like, you're not that way though, don't worry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's been a real
just
pleasure.
balance.
So thank you for joining me for this time. It's been a real pleasure. Is there any other things you want to tell us about business, about ways people can contact you, get in touch? We already got the website there. What else do people know about your business?
The website, my email is the same as my website. It's just info@thegcs.co. And like I said, thanks everyone. If you're watching or gonna watch later, just another small business like everything. But we do ukulele, classical guitar, anything, pretty much all kinds of acoustic instruments. And yeah, if you're interested, you can check out our products online or send me an email. Be happy to. We could use the work right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thanks a lot for the plug. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Jacob. So this was some good minutes spent. I really appreciate it.
Cool, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, talk soon.